Our first guest is Mr. Roger Cohen. He served as the RAA President this year since December of 2006, and he brings to the regional airline industry more than 3 decades of experience. He served as past Vice President in Regional Affairs for the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. Cohen began his aviation career at TWA and has spent more than 15 years with the Air Transport Association, which is now Airlines for America. Please help me in welcoming Mr. Roger Cohen.
Thanks very much, Stephen. Thanks and good morning. I don't even know if the mic's on. Usually people don't even need it. This is really a great honor to be invited and to meet with you all. What is recognized clearly throughout the industry as one of the leading aviation universities in the country. And if it's not number one, it is certainly on the Mount Rushmore of aviation universities, and that is a tremendous. Got a tour yesterday, and I was just blown away with not just the facilities, not just the commitment of all of the people that are here, but and the people who help make this this university so special, but really with the enthusiasm and the passion of all the people I met last night. You know, and there is a lot going on in Washington, and I'll share with you that in a second. But I could not pass up this opportunity, this wonderfully gracious invitation from you to make this is the Mecca, and to make the pilgrimage that I'm ashamed to say has really taken me 40 years. It's not 30, it's about 40 years to make. What's going on, and I'll just share a little experience. Yesterday, so I left Washington in the morning and connected through Minneapolis-St. Paul. And as we were landing and I was able to turn on my cell phone, my BlackBerry just literally exploded. And it usually doesn't do that. I mean, with urgent call, got to call this person, got to call this person. I looked around. And I'll give you a little bit of a heads up. Later on today, the Airlines for America Regional Airline Association, are going to be filing a lawsuit against the FAA to prevent some of the controller layoffs that are going to be going on. There's a press conference in Washington that they asked me to come back to be one of the principals at, and I literally said, you know, made a commitment to these people at North Dakota, and that's just as important. So I really want to tell you just how special you and this institution are. So I think that's about says it all. You know, it's 40 years, but I've got to tell you, I've been able to eke out a kind of a meager career in aviation. But you all are way, way, way ahead of me because you actually are preparing and planning on that career. I got started by accident. I literally just answered an ad in the Daily Northwestern at Northwestern University that was an ad for a campus sales rep for Transworld Airlines. That was back in 1971, and yes, it was before airlines took reservations on computers. I actually started doing reservations on 3x5 cards. I realize that for everybody in this room, it probably is like, you know, the Stone Age, but that's the way the business was. But let me make a guarantee to you, and this is, I speak from experience here, and I think this says it all. In the words of one of our leading CEOs, the President and CEO of SkyWest Airlines, Chip Childs, if you want it, I'm going to make a guarantee that there's going to be a good and likely great career ahead of you. It'll be challenging, it'll be exciting, it'll be different every day, as yesterday proved to me, as sustainable financially as just about anything else in today's economy, and most of all, which it's got over everything else, it's going to be fun. It's maybe not as much fun as it was for me back in the disco 70s, but it's still more fun than most. I know it from experience, not only from my own. I have 2 sons, both about your age, one just graduating college and one a couple of years out of college. who are at work. I work with literally hundreds of people who were just out of college at our association management company, and I can tell you that working in aviation is still really cool. And just talking to, I had the opportunity last night to chat with several of you and showing around yesterday and meeting with people with Stephen yesterday. I kind of knew from, just kind of, that the reputation of the people that were here. But I really wanted to be able to go back now and say I've actually talked to you, met with you, been there, done that. And I was blown away. Just how far advanced you were doing. Throwing an event like this is what I do for a living. And you've done it just as successfully, if not more so. So again, everybody, you all deserve a great round of applause. So it is literally blown me away. I really just want to talk a little bit about who the regional airlines are, and then really just open it up for a dialogue. And open, candid, whatever question you want to ask about anything, nothing is off base. So let me just tell you a little bit about RAA. It says 27 airlines. We actually have 28 airlines. We've got 200 associate members. Some of our member airlines, and I saw a number of representatives are here for the career fair. I saw Great Lakes. I think I saw Compass. I saw Cape Air. I may have missed ExpressJet. If any of you were there, all great members, longtime members of the RAA. We have 200 associate members, which are suppliers in the industry. Here's who we are. But I think most laymen, you all know these names, but most laymen really know the names that we fly, whom we fly for. And this is a chart that changes sometimes almost daily, but this is the brand name, who does the ticketing, who the 160 million regional airline passengers a year go to buy their tickets, but they're really flying on these folks in a really seamless service that is far superior to when I started working back in the 70s and what commuter airlines, as they were then known, provided to the passengers back then. By the numbers, 13,000 flights a day. Last year, about 160 million passengers. Every state's got regional airline service. And we operate, and this number has been steady. It's gone a little bit above 50%. It's a little bit shade below, about 49.5 right now. Half of the nation's scheduled passenger flights are regional airlines. We serve 658 airports across the U.S. 470 of them, that's about 70%, are served only by regional airlines. So we are the only connection for those communities to the global economy. Here's $1 billion to the U.S. economy. There are 50,000 regional airline employees now, roughly. Unfortunately, that number when I first started at RAA was over 60,000. And I think that's a reflection of some of the consolidation and changes in the industry and some of the ways that airlines are serving communities. Hopefully that number will start growing again. And I think here's something that was a kind of a gee whiz fact that was important to point it out, that the salaries of commercial U.S. airline pilots, if those of you I realize the struggle that it is to become a pilot. But as I've said to everybody yesterday, you should stick with it because not only is it a great, fun, challenging career, but over the course of your career, it's still 40% higher than the average U.S. worker. And that's great, to have a great job like that. Again, here's the growth story. Go back to the dawn of deregulation. And yeah, I was there back in 1980. Carried about 15 million passengers. That's increased tenfold there, now over 160 million. The growth of the airplane, size of the airplane, seating capacity. Back then it was under 20 seats, now approaching 60 seats. That total number of airplanes that we have in the fleet now, it has stayed relatively steady at about that 2,100 number in terms of regional aircraft in U.S. commercial service. Again, the trip length has grown dramatically. Back in, again, at the dawn of deregulation, it was just about, a little over 100 miles was your average stage length, and now it's approaching 500 miles, and that's continuing to grow. Here's an issue that I know we're all going to be talking about. It's been the #1 priority for RAA for a number of years. We've really led the charge industry-wide. I'm trying to put a spotlight on this issue and say that, yeah, this is different. This time, this pilot shortage is different. We'll get for a number of reasons. And we use the North Dakota, one of Kent Lovelace's, who's been very close and worked with us over the last several years. The number of some of the statistics, and there's a range of studies that are out there. We're pleased to say that the GAO, the General Accountability Office of the United States government, has agreed to do a very balanced, independent study of the whole issue of pilot supply. They're well into it. Just got started this year. Hopefully that study will be completed here sooner rather than later, which will really try to identify what the actual numbers are. But I think there's pretty widespread agreement about the factors that are really causing it. And it's multiple factors. Some of them short-term, but many of them much more demographic and what I call long-term factors. These are some of the factors that affect the supply of pilots, and you all are living this right now. #1 right here, the cost of coming to this university and similar places. #2, the training capacity of places to actually train people. Shortage of maybe instructor pilots, although that I saw some factors in Come Fly With Me, all those kind of movies that you probably don't even watch because you say, oh my gosh, that's so dated. Frankly, they understated it. It was that glamorous, that fun, that much fun. It was a different world, different environment. Much of it disappeared with deregulation. And then you go through 3 decades of airlines that were once iconic names, TWA, Pan Am, Eastern, Braniff, gone. The carriers that have survived today, mainline carriers, every one of them has gone through a major bankruptcy, restructured its contracts with its employees, with its vendors, several times for some. And that's just one of the impacts of a very challenging economy. None of that has helped glamorize the industry, just the opposite. It's made it a lot tougher. So those are things that, as you, and of all the young people, thought about this the other day, is that when I came up in the airline business, and I'm going to make a confession to you, despite 40 years being in and around aviation, including having free lessons as an official at the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, where I had a staff of about 30 people, of which 25 of them were CFIs. And we had an airplane right there that we could just go out and use anytime we wanted and could fly around. I still only have about 8 hours in my logbook. I found it to be as hard a thing as I've ever tried to do. And so anybody that can even take it up and stick with it, my hat is off to you, because it is damn hard to do. I couldn't do it. I blame my colorblindness, but that really isn't the case. It really was very, very difficult. But one of the things that I used to hear and see was that so many young people got into it because they would be able to go out, particularly young people that may not hadn't grown up in an urban environment, would go out to the local airport and just look at airplanes all the time. And I got a sense that there's still some of you out there and that's how you get started doing this. But there's fewer and fewer of you today than there were 30 years ago. One of the reasons is that some of those airports, it's gotten hard to just walk out there and go out and see the airport. And part of that is after 9/11. At AOPA, I was responsible for our airport watch program, and you're putting fences up around all these GA airports. Now, what kind of welcoming thing is that? Is you put up these barbed wire fences instead of just being able to go out and see the airplanes? That sends a real bad message. So again, these are some, and obviously we can get into the whole new qualification guidelines, and I'll be glad to address that. But these are some of the supply factors. The demand factors, again, these are out of everybody's control. Number one are new rules about who can fly, where they can fly, how they can fly. Again, attrition, because it has become a tough industry, and people say, to hell with it, I'll go sell real estate. The retirements and the age 60 rule, which changed then to 65, kind of pushed off, really just delayed what was the inevitable. And those retirements are going to start happening right about now. And then the scheduled growth or shrinkage of the industry. Airlines, to try and be profitable, to return so that they can be sustainable growing in the future. And so that means probably fewer flights and controlling capacity. So, and that doesn't mean just unbridled growth. And that's just the reality of today's economy. But with all of that, I still have the passion of 40 years. And what I would share with you is that just please keep that passion. I saw it and sensed it all day yesterday from everybody. Stick with it because, as I saw and talked to you all last night, I kind of said, I can see this person being, an executive with this airline. I can see this person being the senior captain at another airline. I could see this person running this airport. And I know these people and have known them for 40 years. And I saw in each of your faces that I could project out that in 15, 20, 30 years, that'll be you. And sooner rather than later, I would suspect. So again, thanks. Any question that I can answer for you about anything, have at it. So this has really been a great honor. So, any questions? Come on. There's one.
Do you see much consolidation in the future for the regional airline market? I mean, you see the majors, more and more consolidation, but I guess you see a little bit in the regionals, but certainly not like you do at the majors.
Well, I think we're on that path. And frankly, for RAA, for example, one company, one overall company, represents about 35% of the overall industry, and that of our membership, and that would be SkyWest Inc., which is SkyWest and ExpressJet. And the ExpressJet is really the combination of the former ExpressJet and Atlantic Southeast. Republic Holdings represents about another 10, 12% of the, and that's Republic, Chautauqua, and Shuttle, and then Eagle, American Eagle, and whatever, where that fits in going forward under the U.S. Airways American merger is a good question. So the answer is, yeah, maybe there'll be more consolidation, but at the same time, I'm very encouraged that I see a number of startup regional concepts, regional airlines, and so I think that the one thing that I've learned is, number one, don't make predictions. And the fact that I pay my bookmaker as often as I do does say that I'm not very good at it. But these things will change and continue to change, and that's the thing about aviation, because airplanes, you can move them, change them, can change literally on a dime, because the industry is that nimble, that flexible. I may be a minority of one, but the two airlines, for example, in recent past that have operated like old school regional airlines, which was doing their own ticketing, their own marketing, their own and flying under their own brand to the consumer. The 2 times that's happened in the last 10 years have been the previous ExpressJet and Independence Air, which was the old Atlantic Coast, which was based out of Dulles, and then ExpressJet, which had a big operation in the Southwest and along the West Coast. Both didn't survive, and there's probably dozens of reasons why they didn't survive. Fuel prices, the economy, over competition from some competitive response from some of the mainline carriers. But the main reasons you have a business was not the reason why they didn't fail, and that's a lack of customers that loved them. And so that says to me that there is the possibility, and the conditions are right, the aircraft is right, and done right, that there will be regional airlines flying direct point-to-point between communities in this country sometime soon. I believe that. Again, I may be in the minority in that, but I truly believe it. Come on, guys. It didn't take those beers last night to get you.
You're talking about the growth of the regional airlines and how it's not growing a lot. Do you think as our economy pulls out of this recession and the FAA starts deregging from 9/11, do you think they'll start that growth back up and start buying more planes, hiring new people?
Well, hiring new people, yes.
Yeah.
And the hiring is going to go on simply because the industry needs, that is, and it's not just pilots, it's technicians, it's everything. So, like I said, that's the key message here. I'm not sure what the industry is going to look like, but you will be if you want to be, you will be gainfully employed and have a lot of fun in the aviation industry, guaranteed. I just don't know anybody who's got the skills, who's got the passion for it, that can't find the job. Now, it may not be the first, and again, I didn't plan on staying in aviation either. I just skipped lunch and we had time to go in for an interview to be a campus sales rep, of which I knew nothing about. And the next thing, it's 40 years later, and I'm still, hawking airline seats. So you never know where it's gonna go. But whether there's going to be unbridled growth in the aviation, it's all one industry. So it's not as if the regional industry is going to grow like this and the mainline industry is going to go like this or vice versa. It's all going to go together because it all is one industry. I just don't know any industry in this country that's going to have that kind of unbridled growth curve like that going forward because it's just not sustainable economically. But there'll be solid, steady growth. What's interesting is that the FAA, which does a forecast every year, 10 years ago, predicted we'd be at 1 billion passengers, like 2 years ago. And we're still really it's still about 750, 780 million, thereabout, passengers a year. So their growth forecasts have always been way over inflated. And I remember where I was the night of September 10th, 2001 rather. September 10th, that night, I was in New York arguing for expansion of runways, expansion of the capacity, expansion of the system in front of a big public group, saying we needed to do this, we needed to build new runways. That was the night of that. We've never, ever gone back close to where we were back to September 10th of 2001.
Do you think the further implementation of NextGen may help out the industry?
It needs to get done. Hopefully we'll get there. I've so many years being in Washington in the political arena that I've been in, you can get to be real skeptical. But I think I've finally seen, number one, the industry be solidified. And when I say the industry, it's not just the airlines, it's general aviation, it's organized labor, it's the controllers, it's the FAA, it's everybody. Congress has said, recognize we do need to get to next gen. There is widespread agreement. For the first time that I've seen, there's a broad consensus that we got to do it. There's been some kind of grass, what do they call those, green shoots coming up with efforts that have been successful, you know, in Seattle, in implementing some of these technologies, so it can work. The whole federal sequestration and federal budget cuts right now are not going to help. But I think everybody recognizes that we do need to get there. And I see that being an important step. Institutionally, I think particularly getting the NACA, the Air Traffic Control Union, to say, yeah, we're not here about job protection, we're really about trying to make our jobs easier. And much of that is generational, because everybody that's coming in, like yourself, is much more open and attuned to using technology than the people who preceded you. And I think that has been probably the reason why I think it's gotten over that initial hump. So now it's just a question of money and time getting it done. So particularly within the FAA, to be able to certify things and get things in place and be able to put these procedures in place. Yet I'm not a pilot, but our convention, our annual convention, is just in less than 2 weeks away, which is really what would normally be consuming me now. But we're going to get a demonstration of nav cans, the Canadian technology. We're going to get some demo flights, and I think they're very well advanced there in Canada, and I think it also says that that's something we may be looking towards here. I was not able, has been and will, to be able to continue to serve those using other types of nav aids. We operate in non-controlled towers now, so that was the plan, and still is the plan, if we can. One of the issues is, will the FAA be able to maintain the infrastructure, the nav aids and so forth, that we're going to need to do that without a control tower? And so we'll see how it shakes out. But the plan is to be able to continue to serve those airports. The other airports don't have commercial service. They're general aviation airports, so plan to do them safely. Now, that's setting aside the question of, well, the need for the towers. Obviously, there was a need for them at some point, so all of a sudden, one day you just don't need them again. There is some margin of safety there, added margin of safety that those towers are providing. Otherwise, they shouldn't have been there to begin with. The second issue is some shift closures at a broader number of commercial service airports and closing them for the midnight shift. And the initial plan was to work with the FAA so that wouldn't really affect too many scheduled flights. That because particularly for regionals, most of our flights in that midnight controller shift period are in the early morning. So the flights leaving, for example, a place like Grand Forks will leave here to get to Minneapolis in time for that first morning bank out of Minneapolis. So there may be a 5 o'clock departure or whatever, 5:30. We've tried to work with the FAA so that the shift closure, that maybe the shift would start a little bit earlier. We don't have too many late night flights. That is, hopefully we were going to be able to work that out so it wouldn't be too much of a disruption. The reason for the lawsuit is really what's planned going forward, and that is a plan to literally furlough every FAA employee, every controller, every inspector for 1 day out of the next 2 weeks. It's a 10% reduction, essentially. And if you do that at an O'Hare, at a Kennedy, at a DFW, that is going to literally crater the system, because delays at some of those places now on a good day can be can be bad, particularly in a bad weather day. We saw some figures that the FAA provided us the other day, showed what the impact could likely be of that, and it was literally what I would say in terms of the nation's air traffic system, Armageddon. It would literally shut it down. That their model would show that on a good day, the number of ground delays would be nearly three times as bad as the worst day we had last year, the middle of July, which was a thunderstorm across the whole central U.S. And that just shuts the system down. That's why we took the action that will be taken later on today.
How's the new flight time, duty time, rest rules going to affect, say, quality of life for pilots as it relates to commuting, working extra days, having the ability or lack of to work enough hours to make a living? How is that going to affect the regionals versus how it might affect majors?
Great question, and I could go on a long time about this because, number one, the new rules, the rules regarding flight and duty needed to be reviewed. They hadn't been changed since the dawn of the jet age. And so we at RAA and our members we're strong supporters of having new science-based rules. And I'll get into something that we are on our own have done. When the issue got kind of jump-started several years back, that was that issue you brought out, that pilots are going to have to actually fly more days to get their hours in, was something that we recognized. And we understood but the decision was made not by us, but by the FAA, with the strong support of organized labor representing the pilots, that they needed to do this. I think even they recognized that for everybody that was going to mean that you're going to have to fly more days to get the same hours. So in terms of your quality of life, I can't make that judgment. Only pilot can make that judgment. But I think you hit the nail on the head. It is going to require more hours. In terms of overall impact on the industry, I think that it's going to obviously have an impact. It's a manageable impact in terms of, when you just look at the data, I've seen estimates of anywhere of requiring staffing level of, in the single digits, anywhere around 5 to 10% would be the most. Most a little bit less than that, depending on the type of the operation, type of schedule, and so forth. So the rules needed to get updated. We will be doing it. Everybody will be doing it. I think overall it's a good thing. But there's going to be some adjustment for everybody to do. And that begins right about the end of the year. Okay. On the issue of fatigue, which is the number one risk factor, and I think it's important to note that we are now, knock on wood, in the safest period in commercial aviation history, and it's because of everybody in it, from every employee to the government to every airline company to the manufacturers to everybody. It is tremendous because safety is a shared responsibility. We on our own looked at that there's very little science out there as it relates to fatigue in multi-segment, short-haul operations. The only real science that's out there has been on these long-haul flights from, New York to Mumbai. And so we have, several years ago, commissioned an independent study done by Washington State University's Sleep Science Center that for the first time ever not only looked at the computer modeling of what fatigue would have impact on that multi-segment operations has on fatigue. We just got done with the first ever blind study using real pilots, flying real simulators, flying real airline schedules, staying in real crew hotel rooms, getting shuttled back and forth over a 2 or 3 week period, getting real data and science about the impact of multi-segment operations in fatigue. Those results will be shared at our annual convention in Montreal coming up here in 2 weeks by the Washington State University people who conducted the study blind. I have no idea. None of the pilots, it was all done blindly. No one knows who were the people doing it. There's no tape of it. No one's identified. We totally hands off. I don't know what the results say. I'm looking forward to it as much as everybody else. But that is going to be very helpful in being able to use that science to help develop schedules going forward which mitigate the effects of fatigue, which recognize it, help manage it, help, most of all, prevent it or eliminate it. And that's the goal of the science. So something we're 100% invested in trying to get those done. It looks like our time is almost up.
Hey, I guess my question
My
is...
friend from JetBlue.
What's that?
My friend from JetBlue.
There you go. One of the struggles now we look at for between the majors and the regionals, and certainly not in an adversarial way, but a lot of these talks become rooted in scope, right? So going forward, for a company like us, we don't have a branded regional affiliate, if you will, but we're still talking about scope language. Mm-hmm. And so the regionals are progressively looking at flying bigger platforms. And we realize the economics of a 50-seat jet is no longer viable, or at least in the current iteration. So how are you guys at the RAA looking at, one, the smaller lift capacity or platform for one, and how are you dealing with this increase in size of airplanes that's needed for essentially the viability of the regional? I don't know if that question makes sense.
Well, it does. Let me first of all start off. RAA, doesn't address that. As an institution, as an organization, we don't address anything like that. That's scope is an individual negotiation between individual companies. But the issue that you point out about smaller aircraft is a major one, and I think the biggest thing that it would be helpful that doesn't exist today is a technologically advanced smaller aircraft, be it jet or turboprop, and that would be in the 50-seat and under category. And if somebody were to develop that anywhere in the world, they'd be selling them like hotcakes because the growth around the world would be so great, for that aircraft. As the stats show, the larger regional aircraft, both jets and turboprop, are wildly successful. You've got brand new platforms being sold, and Mitsubishi and Embraer and Bombardier of those larger regional aircraft are selling great. Again, as I pointed out, I still think with the right economics and the right mission, the 50-seat jet has a long way to go. And in closing, I will say, I started in this business, and Delta, then Northwest, was planning on retiring its DC-9s within the year. I will share with you that those aircraft, now 40 years later, I believe are still in the fleet. So anybody's prediction about the demise of an aircraft being economically viable, I always take with a real grain of salt. But I think also, as it relates to scope, the economy is going to drive all this. And if the airplane makes sense economically, there's going to be some way to find people to fly it and people to hopefully make money doing it. That would be. So I think our time is up. I'd be glad to meet with any of you. Again, this was really terrific. It's one of those things in the aviation world that I was talking to somebody, if you're a golfer, you got to go to St. Andrews. If you're in the aviation business, you got to come and come to North Dakota. And to be asked to do this was truly an honor, and I want to thank you. And most of all, good luck to all of you.